All right. Hi, everyone. I'll just wait for my slides to come up. Thank you. Thanks for that. Yes, so my name is Chantel. I'll be talking about the IPSN's training framework, and then I'm going to hand over to Alice to talk about the competencies framework at the end. So we're going to share this talk. So I guess just to start with a bit of context about where I come from and why I'm up here talking about an IPSN tool. So I'm from the Centre for Pathogen Genomics, which is in Melbourne, based at the Doherty Institute, and part of our work is really supporting both research and public health. And we have a training hub, and I guess that's where the work to develop the training framework sits. So the idea around connecting trainers and implementers globally was something that we discussed with IPSN before the Global Partners Forum in 2024. And it really came about because we as trainers were really interested in understanding what others were doing, particularly more broadly across the Asia-Pacific region where we work. We wanted to understand if the training that we were providing and delivering was best practice and how we could improve on our approaches, and then also how we could share resources, how we could stop reinventing the wheel, and I guess harmonise with other training initiatives. So how we did this, I guess, was, yes, we hosted a workshop in Bangkok last year alongside the Global Partners Forum, where we brought people together to really discuss those things. And I'm not going to go through, I guess, all of the outputs just because of time, but I guess some of the things that we really wanted to do and some of the recommendations that came out of that workshop were to develop a position paper. So the position paper is in draft and it's going to talk about the challenges and the opportunities with training in the current training landscape, as well as, I guess, the next steps on how we can harmonise. And some of those ideas were things like really understanding what training materials and resources are already available, and then possibly exploring how we might share those resources in a way and how IPSN might be able to enable that. We also spoke a lot about how we could connect trainers and implementers globally. So through communities of practice, through forums like this, and sessions around workforce training. And then I guess I'm really going to focus today on this idea of the best practice model for capacity building and training. So the best practice model has really kind of formed into what is the workforce training and competencies framework as part of the IPSN toolkit. So we call it a training and competencies framework, but there are actually kind of two frameworks that are kind of work together and are aligned. The training framework is very much focused on kind of how you would deliver the training for it to be sustainable. What are the considerations more broadly than just the immediate training program? Whereas the competencies framework, which Alice will talk about in a moment, is really guiding kind of the specific topics you need to cover and how do you know that you are hitting the mark and providing the people that you're training with the skills that they need to deliver. So I must say that the training framework is still in its early stages, and I'm going to present on the structure, but the details are yet to come. And I guess how we've come up with this structure is on that left-hand side, you can see a screenshot which is out of the WHO considerations for developing a genomic surveillance strategy document. And that's, kind of the process of how you would develop a strategy and all the components that go into a genomic surveillance system for public health. So, and then on the right-hand side is the training framework structure, where we've tried to kind of adapt the processes from the strategy into this, what the components of the training would need to be included in order to support the implementation of a strategy. So the components are things like governance and program design, lab workflows, bioinformatics analysis, reporting and communication, and public health integration and evaluation. And then around the outside of those components, or those kind of topic areas, are these core considerations. So how do you design training that is sustainable? What are the considerations? And some of the things that participants at the workshop came up with last year were things like, do you have strong engagement, and is it a co-design model with partners in country when you're developing the training? Teaching and learning, so what's the model to delivering training that is most impactful, and things like mentoring or peer-to-peer engagement and ongoing ongoing partnerships across trainers and implementers were really highlighted there. Assessment and credentialing, which is, I guess, thinking about how you can, one, as a trainer, assess that what you're doing is working, but then also that the topics that you're teaching are really being absorbed and being used. And then, of course, implementation. What are the, I guess, components or considerations about how the training will actually be implemented in country? And some of the ideas that came about were, understanding what the broader genomics literacy is and what the funding landscape is. So, as I've said, this is still in the development stages, and our next step is to establish a technical working group to support kind of further refining this structure and the content that will go under the structure, defining what the outputs are. So how can we turn this framework into a tool or a guidance that will be useful and that will support both trainers and implementers, and then a consultation plan. So I guess similar to the process with other tools in the IPSN toolkit, we would like to test this and make sure that it works and continue to refine it as we develop. And then I guess just to illustrate kind of, the IPSN has all these great slides, and I kind of adapted this one for the training framework. So for example, the persona is, if I'm a program manager and I've got, a project in place that is supporting implementation of genomics for public health, the numbers are, how you might usually go about designing and then delivering a training program, and then the round circles in green are how the framework might kind of integrate into the process. So for example, at the start, the framework would hopefully guide what you would aim for, how we might deliver it, and what are the considerations. And then as you go through kind of the competency or the capacity assessment, it would also help to guide what we have and what we don't have in terms of our technical capacity, as coming from a trainer angle. And hopefully then, through that, how you would connect with others who might provide additional resource or additional expertise that would make the training framework a little bit more robust. And then, of course, and I've put asterisks there where other IPSN tools would support bits of this process, but going back, assessing, reviewing and refining, and then sharing that knowledge and resources back to that idea of a broader training community of practice. So I will just hand over to Alice to talk about the competencies framework.
Thank you, Chantel. So I'll quickly give you a brief about the competency framework. So as Chantel mentioned, a lot of the training that needs to be developed needs to be underpinned by what you want people to be able to do, and then thinking about how you're going to design the materials or training that is relevant for them to be able to do their work. So here I'm just showing you some of the people that have been substantially involved in this work. Some of them are here, including David Anson and Michelle. So we came about this, we developed this because we wanted to fill in a gap. So we are aware that a lot of people need training in genomics or bioinformatics, but it's not very clear what exactly people need, what levels or proficiency levels people need. So we have we will be publishing a paper on this, on how we actually came about with this framework, but I'll just quickly say that at the time we realized that there wasn't really any clear sort of like guideline with that sort of like end-to-end pathogen genomics pipeline in mind, and so we decided to start developing one. So what we did is we built what we call a 360 competence framework, and I'll explain why. This 360 competence framework consists of 10 domain topics, and there are 60 topics in this framework. And we then mapped these topics across what you would call 6 levels of proficiency. In other words, divided into sort of, people that are able, if you're able to just have to recall some material, some information, or you're expected to be able to apply that information, or you're expected to create new workflows. So these are some of the levels that we have used: remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And in this case, it means that you're able to, if you're able to self-determine what your self-rate where you are, you're then able to determine where you want to get to as an individual, and then use that to find the type of materials you need. So you might be at a level where you're able to sort of like recall genomic concepts, and you would be interested in being able to apply or analyze genomics, and this way you would be able to then identify what type of training you need. So this framework, consisting of this 10 domains, starting from biological concepts all the way to, through to technical topics, and also cross-cutting themes and topics that are more focused on how can you establish, for example, genomics capacity, and how can you train in pathogen genomics. They're all in there, and we have designed it in such a way that it's not prescriptive, it is adaptable. It gives you something to start thinking about how you're going to design your training. And it can be used across different countries, different contexts, and by learners and by trainers and anyone who's interested in developing training genomic skills. So this is just a quick brief of the tools that we've developed that constitute the toolkit. So we have a database that we've developed, and this database is the 360 database, so it has the 360 competencies. And it is currently saved on GitHub, and we have developed an app that is being used to operationalize this database. So in other words, so we can pull information as you need it. And we have also developed a guideline that you can use to, if you are interested in doing operationalizing this for yourself as well. So these are some of the applications that include, developing your curriculum, which is what everybody's interested in, workforce planning, conducting needs assessments for the learners or even as a trainer. And we have quite a lot of ongoing validation to get, and getting feedback from, we've been receiving feedback from different organizations. We've been working with the Africa CDC pathogen genomics curriculum that Nikki and her team have been developing, and also working with the UK HSA and other organizations to get them to validate or implement it and see how we can improve it. So looking ahead, this is a living resource, and so we're going to be working also with the IPSN to make it as part of the training toolkit and as a foundation for global workforce strengthening in genomics and public health. And we are collaborating with the Doherty, the Center for Pathogen Genomics, Doherty Institute, and hopefully it can be underpin the training implementation toolkit for the IPSN. So that is all I have to say, and thank you.